Guys, what's going on? Hello and welcome to Serial at Midnight. I'm Heath, and in this episode we're talking about The Batman, the complete series, now on Blu-ray from Warner Brothers. What is The Batman? Well, it's hard to talk about this series without discussing Batman the Animated Series, right? So Batman the Animated Series, early 90s, it's this huge gothic film noir stained, Emmy-winning, multiple award-winning pillar of Batman history, right? It influenced multiple generations, and the Batman goes in another direction. It actually does something that we've never had in any Batman series before or after. It's this very hyper stylized, very colorful, but still true to what we want from it. It's still dark. See, here's the thing: Batman the Animated Series. It's I think this is common knowledge. Like basically animated on black paper, like the background's drawn on black background, right? So what can this show do to separate itself? So the skyline, right? It's so colorful. The sky is rarely black. It's red or green or blue or purple. And the color, the use of color in the show is it's another one of the characters. It's so bright. It's so colorful. But Batman is still Batman. And he's still driven by, the desire for revenge, the desire to bring criminals to justice. The series finds him about 2 years into his crime-fighting career, which, these are drawing from, Batman Year 1, Year 2, the Frank Miller stuff. And then that's, of course, an influence on Matt Reeves and the Robert Pattinson version of the Batman. But this series it started in 2004. So this is pre-Nolan. This is a year before Nolan really kicks off his trilogy. By the way, sidebar, because of that, some of the villains from the Nolan movies were off the table because Warner, which is a strange decision because you'd think it'd be a good cross-promotional opportunity. Like this, we're getting this because we've got the Matt Reeves movie. But certain characters were off the table. The Joker's, of course, here. Although it's a different all these characters, it's a different version than anything we've ever seen before. It's not purist. It's very stylized. And again, when it's all been done already, as it has been, you've got the 66 Batman, you've got the Batman the Animated Series, you've even got, by that point, 70 years of comics or something like that. It's all been done before. So what do? They bring in style, super style, the ridiculous proportions, cartoon proportions. It's a Saturday morning cartoon. It's for kids. And it came on, 65 episodes spread across 5 seasons, 13 episodes in a season. So I watched this, I was a grown man, out of the house, married, watching Saturday morning cartoons for my fix of Batman. And I loved it for what it was. It was such a unique approach. And the trajectory, he starts out 2 years in, he's finding himself, right? And then over the course of the series, they bring in Batgirl. Then they're bringing Batgirl before Robin. Then they bring in Robin. Then, we got all these different takes on the Rogues Gallery. We've got a different take we've got an Oswald Cobblepot penguin that has spent time in the Middle East and knows martial arts and all this stuff. The Joker is very, very different from the Mark Hamill approach. The Riddler is almost like a Marilyn Manson goth kind of a thing. But again, when everything's already been done, do something different. I should also mention so much of the talent behind the scenes here would go on to, some of the writing people would go on to Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and Star Wars Rebels. Big stuff. I mean, a lot of talent. And this series was nominated for a lot of awards too. But then they introduce, now you've established Batman, you've established Gotham City as this, the Zeppelins, it's all there, all the stuff we want from Gotham, the Gothic architecture. But then they open it up to the larger DC universe. So we've got, we've got members of the Justice League. We've got threats that, like a Green Lantern kind of like Batman with the Green Lantern ring. It's the way to say, I love that. As a comic book fan, I like my entertainment. I want to be careful how I say this because, of course, I adore Batman the Animated Series. That was my Batman every afternoon, every single day. Watched him over and over and over again. Probably one of the reasons I'm so interested in film noir as an adult, because of Batman the Animated Series. So I love that. But I love this for a different reason, because it's bringing that colorful comic book reality where anything can happen. And we don't... I can't think of another version of Batman that's actually done what this one does. Because there's the CG show, right? The one that's completely computer animated. We also have Batman Brave and the Bold. But that's something else too. That's more of a kid-friendly, I mean, this is kid-friendly too, but that's more of a lighthearted team-up show with comedy, and it's a lighter approach. This isn't necessarily a lighter approach. It's still pretty rooted in the Batman that we want to see, but it's just done in such a stylized Saturday morning cartoon style. But I wanted to read some of the voice cast to you guys, because that's one of the things, as some of you guys are like me, you like the actors, that human element brings you to different projects. I maybe even am more of an actor follower than a particular story follower. Like, I'll show up for a movie because of who's in it. So Ming-Na Wen is Detective Ellen Yin, which is directly kind of inspired by the comics. Mitch Pileggi from The X-Files is Commissioner Gordon. Tom Kenny, SpongeBob, is the Penguin. Let's see. Adam West is Mayor Grange. Clancy Brown, Mr. Freeze. Lex Luthor, Bane. Who else do we have here? Gina Gershon is Catwoman, which is great casting. Ron Perlman is Killer Croc. And Bane as well. He does a take on Bane too. Robert Englund, Freddy, is the Riddler. That's right. Robert Englund as the Riddler. I think that's amazing casting. Chris Hardwick is the Green Arrow. Peter McNichol, Dragon Slayer, is Dr. Kirk Langstrom. Frank Gorshin, another nod to the 66 series, the Riddler from the 66 series, is Professor Hugo Strange. A recurring character on this show. I think he's the only, or up to this point, the only version of Hugo Strange that was a recurring character on the Batman TV series. Hugo Strange goes way back to the very beginning of the Batman mythos, the comics, the Detective Comics Batman, and sort of the mad doctor, Dr. Frankenstein sort of a character. So bringing him as a recurring character on this series is great. Dan Castellaneta, Homer Simpson, is Scarface. Let's see, James Remar is Black Mask. Diedrich Bader, who would voice Batman in Brave and the Bold, is Captain Slash. Louis Gossett Jr. is Lucius Fox. Dermot Mulroney is Green Lantern. Patrick Warburton, Putty from Seinfeld. Hey, Elaine. Cash Tankinson. Let's see, who else I'm going to bring out the heavy hitters for you guys. Patton Oswalt, that's another one. Cosmo Crank. Fred Willard is in the series. Robert Patrick, have you seen this boy from Terminator 2? He's Hawkman. So that's just a few. I could keep going, but that's just a few of the character actors that are here doing unexpected work, like Ron Perlman, Clancy Brown, Robert Englund, like on a kid's show. It's amazing stuff. For me, it's amazing stuff. So now we have this Blu-ray, which presents all 5 seasons. The movie, Batman, there's a movie, it's like Batman versus the Joker and Dracula. Here's an image of it right here. It's not included in this, and I don't know why, because you would think I think it's the only movie to spin out of this series. And I have it on DVD. Full disclosure, I've bought all these. I have all these seasons on DVD already, so this is an upgrade for me. And I have the movie too, but I'm like, why would they not include the movie unless there's a whole different set of rights to deal with, which is very possible. It's all Warner Brothers, but TV arm, because the movie never came on. It never, as far as I know, it didn't come on Saturday morning television or anything like that, because it was too. Again, we're dealing with cartoons for kids, but they did things that were surprising to me. There's a scene where the Joker is trying to in the movie. We're talking about the movie now, which isn't here, so why am I talking about it? Because I want to tell you what we're kind of dealing with here. There's a scene where the Joker's going for blood. Dracula story, vampires. The Joker's out for blood. Spills blood all over the floor and gets on his hands and knees and starts licking the blood up. So we've never had that level of, it's not adult, but more mature elements in a story, prior to this, in a Batman story prior to this, cartoon. So these are the kind of things, and maybe this opened the door for some of those direct to video DC movies and stuff. But what we have here is the complete series on a 6-disc set. The episodes look great, but they're not. This is 2004 HD, so I imagine that maybe there's some upscaling going on here. But it looks good. It certainly looks a whole lot better than those DVDs. And I should also say the last season of the show I think that was fully HD. But nevertheless, I'm getting too in the weeds here. I try not to talk so much about video quality because it's important, but it's not nearly as important as everything. It's one of the last things that I want to talk about. It's important, but it's not more important than the other elements. So the extras here, we got a new featurette, The Dark Dynasty Continues, that's exploring the relationship between the Batman and his allies. And then they've carried over the extras from the previous DVD releases, which is like, here's the Riddler, and it's a different take. You know, this is like, a lot of this stuff is fairly EPK, like electronic press kit, but you know, I'm happy that they included it for those that want it. So I should mention, you know, The Edge did the theme song for the first 2 seasons. Then after that, they changed the theme song again. Sort of not the first time that I should have mentioned this, but like a very 60s spy inspired, very much focused on the gadgets. There's a real retro cool sense to this show. And I don't mean retro like the 60s, you know, like the Batusi and all that stuff. There's a real like James Bond overlay to a lot of this. And I think that's fairly accurate to a certain interpretation of the comics. And I appreciate that. So here we are in, you know, the early 2020s now, and no other series has done what this series does. If people are discovering this for the first time, I would just caution you not to come to it expecting gritty adult entertainment. That's something that we want. This is the thing that I wanted to talk about really quick, is like we watch these shows, we watch cartoons when we're a kid, and we love those cartoons because they're innocent, they're our entry into a larger world. And then as we get older, we want to drag those cartoons out of our childhood into our adulthood, and we want to morph them from what they were into gritty. You know, I see it a lot with G.I. Joe. Like, I grew up with G.I. Joe, the cartoon, the comics, the toys. Love G.I. Joe. Now we've got a generation of guys in their 40s who want, like, hard R-rated G.I. Joe. And I'm like, it was never that. It was a toy line. By trying to change some of these things, we take away what they actually were and the accessibility for younger generations. So the Batman is pretty well rooted at the crossroads of like adult. I was an adult when I watched it, you know, 2004. I was a grown man. But kids, it was also made for kids. They had toys, and it really makes me happy. This kind of an approach. So I'm celebrating that this series is now on Blu-ray, not because it's better than Batman the Animated Series, but because it's something else, because we have another take. And the fact that it gets a complete series Blu-ray release is pretty wonderful. So that's my experience with the show. That's my interpretation of it. It evolved, it changed, it morphed into something that was very cool. It opened up the whole DC universe for a generation that was discovering Batman for the first time through the Nolan movies, which is interesting because those movies aren't made for kids, and I would argue that they're not accessible to kids either. Want to see this pencil? I'm going to make this pencil disappear. Like, what? That's not for kids. But this was, and it was a gateway for a lot of people. If you love this show, I want to hear from you. If you have never seen this show, I want to hear from you. Let's talk about the Batman in the comments below. Guys, thank you so much. Take care. Until next time, I will catch you later.